Welcome back. Um, this is my, I guess, review of the 2020 Ford Powerstroke diesel. So I looked at a 2020 Ford F-250 Platinum. Um, I drove it. I took some pictures of the engine bay because online there's a lot of people are talking about the how it drives and it's got power and blah 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 blah. The interior hasn't changed in terms of quality and hard plastics everywhere and just the very plain look of the interior. And I'm talking about a platinum. I was in a platinum. It's still the same. It's the Sync 3 I will say is been updated. You can now change the background color in the settings for the display, something you couldn't do in the previous Sync 3, which was so that's different. That's good. Some color changes and whatnot, but still, it's nowhere near the capability of the 12-inch Uconnect screen. Nowhere. Um, Still very plain looking, very simple, and whatever. And I don't mean simple as in it's easy to use. I mean it's simple as it's like a simpleton. It's like comparing, like 79 V Dub or a Beetle to a 2020 Porsche. I mean, it's like night and day difference. Okay, Ford interior is way behind the game. They are lacking huge. Um, Now, still better than GM. GM's even worse. But anyways, so there's not a lot of imagery or pictures about the engine bay on the new 6.7 Powerstroke. And one thing that I noticed immediately, if you haven't noticed already from this image, what's missing? Can you see something that's missing? There's no transmission dipstick. You can't check your transmission fluid. You can check your oil, but you can't check your. Now, I could be wrong here. Like maybe I missed something. But when I was under the hood, I noticed that there is no transmission dipstick. So they've gone the way of the F-150s, where the transmission is if there's an issue, you got to take it into the shop. You can't check the fluid yourself. Now, on the F-150s, it's a lifetime fluid, but you can check the fluid, but you got to go under the truck, and there's a small little dipstick, but you got to crawl under the truck and kind of reach up and over, some parts to get to it. Um, but the point is that they've made it very difficult for you to check your own transmission fluid. But that's how these dealerships make money. They want you to bring it in instead of you doing the work yourself. But anyways, as you can see here, the upper intake is now aluminum. It's no longer plastic. I think that's a good thing. I never understood why they had plastic over here right above a hot turbo, but whatever. Um, this lower intake here is all plastic. As you can see, lots of hoses and plastic, everywhere on these Fords. They just love their plastic. See if I can. Oh no, there we go. Some more imagery here, some more pics. You can see the CCV filter has changed. You can now change out the filter that's in these things. Now, the previous CCV filter wasn't a CCV filter. It was more of a catch can type thing. And I've done a video on that, showing the internals of it. For the chassis cab models, yeah, they were a filter style type of, whatever. Like you can unbolt the top, pull the filter out, put a new one in. But on the pickup truck models, they weren't. They were a catch can type of, filter. Basically, just separating the oil, and the oil would travel back into the crankcase, and the vapors would, go into the intake. But you can now change out that filter. Going back. There we go. You see right here, there are the bolts. You can get to it. This is the passenger side. You can see the EGR cooler, the dual cooler design that they have. You can see the battery has been pushed back. Honestly, like it seems like they didn't really do a lot of fit and finish because you got like wires just kind of everywhere. But whatever. You can see the turbo there, the lower part of the intake. This is your for the exhaust coming from the exhaust manifold into the cooler. This is your hot side. This is your cool side, going into the intake. Oh, keep doing that. Here's a new air filter. Uh, it's it's quite big, and when you look in here, this is where the air comes in. You can see the filter. It's interesting how they did this design, but you know, whatever. And it really, I don't know, it just the fit and finish of it just doesn't look that, I don't know, doesn't look that great. I mean, you still got a whole lot of everything every which way but loose. Like these hoses, these coolant hoses, they could have rerouted this stuff to make it cleaner at least to get these hoses from off the top of the engine. You could route this coolant hose up and around all the way here, and all these hoses can be routed in a different way to make at least the top of the engine like look cleaner. But they didn't do that. They kept these hoses on top, and I don't understand that. But whatever. So that's the look. So I did test drive it. There's some reviews online that oh my god, like the power is great and the transmission is blah 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 blah. Look, it didn't feel any different from a 2019. I'm just gonna be honest. I had two of the new 6.7 Powerstrokes. I had a 17 F350 and a 19 F250. They didn't. The new 2020 didn't really feel all that great. I mean, it did feel like there was more power than the 19, but it's not that. And when you look at it on paper, it's not that much. The 19 has 450 horsepower. The 20 has 475 horsepower. Are you really going to feel that extra 25 horsepower? No. The torque, 935 versus 1050. Are you going to feel that? Yeah, to an extent. I did feel a little bit of a bump, but it's nothing to write home about. Some of these guys are like, oh my gosh, it's like, so powerful, it's a rocket. Look, the 6.7 Powerstroke was already a rocket. The 6.7 Powerstroke, mated to the previous 6-speed 6R140 transmission, is a fantastic powertrain, and it is a rocket. Though the Fords are a rocket, they are super fast. The 2020, it's just a little bit faster. It's still a rocket, but it's nothing to write home about. It amazes me. Some of these guys are just like, oh my gosh, like they've made so many changes. No, they haven't. The only thing that's really changed is the engine, the transmission, some minor things in the front, Sync 3, and that's about it. Okay, suspension, they've made some changes, but it's a refresh. It's just a refresh. So there's not a whole lot of major changes. And that's to be expected because it is just a refresh. But the transmission, I will say the transmission is smoother. Um, I can still feel the shifts. When driving slow, I can still feel it shift. Now, it did skip from like 1 to 3 to 5 or whatever. It does skip gears in the lower speed aspect. I could still feel them. Look, even the previous 6R140, the Ford transmissions are already very smooth. The powertrain is incredibly smooth. So adding, with the introduction of the 10-speed, there's really no difference except you got 10 speeds. It's still smooth. The power is still very linear. The power delivery is very good. And it's still a rocket. But is it leaps and bounds over the previous 19 6.7 Powerstroke with the 6R140 transmission? No. It's not leaps and bounds. It's just an upgrade. That's how I look at it. It's just an upgrade. It's just a refresh, folks. It's got a little bit more power and it's got more gears. That's it. The 10 speed. Look, the point is this: previous 17 through 19 with the 6R140 was already a rocket. It was already smooth. Transmission was amazing. Power delivery is amazing. Everything is just super smooth. The 2020, just from my little drive yesterday, no change. It's still incredibly smooth. It's still like a rocket. It's still fast. Power delivery is great. Very linear. But it's not leaps and bounds over the previous generation. It isn't. It just isn't. That's it. So, anyways, and look, Ford, you can do a little better with cleaning up this engine bay. Like, come on. So, anyways, that's just my take on it. Would I buy one? No, because that look, the 10 speed is not enough for me to move over. The interior of these trucks are still very out of date. Even the salesman, he said in my 19, he was blown away. He was like, "Whoa, this is incredible! Like compared to the Ford, like the Ford, even their limiteds are like nothing compared to the Ram." Yeah, it's true. So, anyways, those are my thoughts. My opinion, my thoughts only. Everyone's got their own opinion. So, yeah, I'm not knocking the trucks. It's just I just wasn't impressed. So.